While in the midst of this whirlwind, I was finally able to set up an interview with fellow engine swapper Nicholas Roedl. Roedl is the horsepower king with a verified 424 horsepower. He's also a bit of a pioneer as he's the first person to swap an LS motor into his Delorean. He documents this in painstaking detail on his site, ls1delorean.com, a site I found a year ago that eventually led to my swap. I was extremely excited to speak with him, and he jumped right into our current issues with the build.
I've been following your project from the beginning. You know, just looking at the quality and the care that went into that engine, the engine would have been the last thing I ever would have expected you to have, like, issues with. I would have expected, like, oh, we have a ground fault going to the fuel pump or, you know, something. But it was like, you know, that engine was bulletproof, right?
Well, it was, and I still believe it is, and I feel bad because we've done everything right. Like, we've spared no expense here. We've made sure he's been so meticulous, and you never think, you just ask them, are the stock rocker arms for an LS3 appropriate for this power? And they go, yes, and you move on. So to see it shatter like that after 30 miles, I mean,
yeah, it's crazy.
But you, sir, probably the first site I ever came across when it came to putting in an LS motor in it, and you changed the way I decided to document mine because you did it so perfectly and so meticulously and showed so much of the build. I thought, well, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to try to do it from a layman's perspective at least.
Yeah, I love the way you've done it. The videos are awesome.
What made you decide to do this and to chronicle it the way you did on that site?
So my degree is in mechanical engineering. I went to the University of Cincinnati, so not far from Columbus.
Right.
And as with almost every engineering degree, you have to finish out your last year with a big final project. And I was talking to one of my advisors. He said, well, you know, what kind of stuff are you interested in? Tell me about, you know, the hobbies you have. I mentioned the Delorean, and the words out of his mouth were, well, what kind of problems does the Delorean have? Are there any problems you could solve? I mean, verbatim, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he said. And I was like, well, it's grossly underpowered, you know, kind of off the cuff, because like you, it was an automatic, and, you know, bare bones PRV. I had an exhaust, but that was about it. And he was like, well, what could you do to improve that? I was like, I'd probably have to change out the engine. And he was like, oh, is that feasible? I was like, well, maybe. Meanwhile, my dad drives a C5 Corvette with the one in it. And I swear, like, one day, I think we were doing an oil change on his car, and it was just like, both of us, it was like, this right here, this is exactly what we should do. This, you know, this aluminum LS1 V8 engine. And so, you know, I was fortunate because I had his engine there. So, you know, I was literally measuring every single thing, like, okay, what is this going to take, you know? And, you know, spent a couple months really just really trying to get every little aspect down that I could, you know, because I had never found anything of anybody doing an LS swap on a DeLorean.
Right.
And, yeah.
And then your first big hurdle, which was my first big hurdle, was that transmission. And how on earth are you going to, you know, you went up to like 400 horsepower. How on earth are you going to go that high and have that transmission make it?
I talked to the guy, Eddie, that did the Super Swap, the one that the Schmuckers now have.
Yeah.
He was running the original, or the manual transmission with the upgraded input shaft coupler, and you know, I was like, oh, he's pushing 400 through that. You know, if nothing else, that gets me going, because my LS at the time was bone stock. You know, so it's, you know, whatever, 300 to the ground or so.
Right. You decided to try to beef up your transmission. At any point did you think about a transmission swap, or was it just costly?
I did, but I'll tell you what. I never thought the Porsche transmission would work. I took measurements, you know, did what I could online, found a guy online that had one and was like sending me measurements, and you guys totally blew that out of the water, because I was just convinced. I was like, man, I would love to do the Porsche transmission. I just can't get it to fit.
We had to completely cut off the subframe, completely hollow out the entire back of the fascia, and the water pump is still rubbing on. So we had to actually make a new subframe that just barely pushes the water pump off. But then after you got it built, you went on that TV show and they updated the heads. Is that right? Or the cams?
I was at an exotic car show here, and there was a camera crew walking around just like shooting B-roll for their show, and they saw the LS and were just like totally enamored with it. They brought up, hey, do you have any interest in, being on the show? We could, what kind of upgrades are you thinking about? I was like, well, cam and head swap's pretty, run of the mill. And they were like, oh man, would you ever want to do that on a show? And me, I'm at the car show like, oh yeah, I'd like to do that. At the same time, I was like, these guys are they probably asked a dozen guys here that same question, and they'll just pick someone down the line. Like 3 or 4 days later, they called me up and said, hey, let's set this up. So yeah, that's how that all worked out.
So that's, of course, when you did the dyno and you got the official read.
Yeah, exactly. With the original transmission, I was like, well, we're on TV. If I'm going to blow this transmission up, there's no better time.
Yeah.
It'll either be a really exciting show because it cranks out, 400 some odd horsepower, or it'll be exciting because we blew up the transmission. So
yeah. You never attempted to put it on a quarter-mile track, like a test and tune, just to see.
No, and the thing is, I even brought it out once or twice, and I don't know. I was dealing with something, and I never did make it back. I actually did try to go 2 different times, and it rained both times, which was really unfortunate. And then since I moved to Florida, the nearest track is quite a bit further away, and up in Ohio, I could have found people in a second that would say, oh yeah, let's go to test and tune, but it's a little bit more difficult here. I always talk about that I want to get it on a track because, especially now that I have the dyno time, it's like, between dyno time and quarter-mile time, those are things everyone wants to know, and, it kind of sucks not having an answer for.
Yeah. Well, listen, congratulations, because you absolutely inspired me to go with the LS, and I think you're the first to do it.
I'm stoked at how much, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or anything, but I'm really happy that, once I did mine, because to my knowledge, I still did the LS first, that, since then, there's just been, I think there's a guy in England, there's like 2 or 3 guys in Australia, Josh is up in Canada, I think there's another guy in Canada doing it. I get pings all the darn time about, send me drawings or send me this. I don't know how much of that actually ever pans out, but now I think you're the second one I've ever heard of in the U.S.
Yeah, I guess it's funny because all the stuff from Josh I saw was in Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? So but I guess that's because he drove down there.
Well, he drives that car like crazy. I'm totally impressed at how much he just jumps in and goes. He'll go like 7,000 miles, like 7,000 mile road trip to Delorean Car Show, and hell, now both of you guys have 6 speed, which I'm pretty jealous of.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, when you're the pioneer, you do have to accept that you're gonna push people a little further.
Yeah. I'm just stoked that people are engine swapping their cars, because I was never obsessed with originality or gotta keep it stock, any of that, which I totally respect those that are, but for me it was like, I know the car I want and I'm gonna build it.
That's and I'm sure you've already seen what I've said about the issue, and I tried to be as respectful as possible, but Delorean didn't make a stock engine.
No.
So stop saying that. That's what kills me. I'm sure if he had the time and money, he absolutely would have built a nice. There would have been a DeLorean Motor Company. Huh? I'm sure he would have written a motor.
We're talking about like the first year in production, second year in production. Imagine what the first year of any car was. Even 10 years later when the company was up, it would have been totally different.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You know how the horsepower game is. I have no idea what it's really going to say. I'll be very curious and very nervous to see what comes out on that, and I'm hoping I beat you, but you know what's awful? I'm hoping I have to beat this silly 575 horsepower BS.
Yeah, right? See, that's what I want you to beat. God, I hate that video is still out there. It's the worst.
It's so frustrating because I've actually asked car people, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're going to try to beat 575? And I'm like, but did you click play? When they went there and it didn't work? Like,
I don't know who how that rumor got so perpetuated that that car had 575. I don't see how it's possible. I don't see how it didn't, blow the transmission, because supposedly that transmission's totally stock.
And it's so frustrating because the host says, yeah, he told me he hadn't run it in a while, that this would be good exercise for it. And I'm thinking, you're having a TV show come out and you haven't turned the key? What is it's like? I've never been so. That video makes my skin crawl. So yes, I think for every engine swap guy, I pray that I at least can get 577 and call it a day.
I hope so too, man. I hope, far more than I hope you beat mine. I just hope you, if it's 575 and a half, 576, so that's at least a whole, number off.